How am I supposed to improve? The starters steal every single rep, and I am left with barely 2. His answer, step on that turf, lock in on those 2 chances, and execute them flawlessly. I absolutely despised facing Ed Reed. That was the raw confession from the legend when discussing his ultimate gridiron rival. Reed transcended the safety position. He was pure terror in cleats. Whenever Baltimore lined up, the quarterback's first objective was tracking him down. The man possessed an otherworldly sixth sense. He would bait signal collars into wide-open traps, only to flash across the field and snatch the pigskin, maddening the legend who secretly admired him. Tape study meant nothing against a guy constantly living in the future. Flawless spirals suddenly became liabilities, though the tension was strictly professional. The sheer dread of a single defensive splash wrecking an entire Sunday is exactly why number 12 loathed their matchups. Real quick, crafting these cinematic breakdowns requires endless archive dives and brutally long nights in the editing bay. If you crave more gridiron war stories, smashing that like icon and hitting subscribe is the ultimate show of respect. Let us dive in. Calling Reed a mere Baltimore defender is an insult. He was the absolute soul of that unit. Officially a defensive back, practically an omnipresent ghost, the greatest of all time admitted that battling that squad meant more than just fighting 11 men. You were locked in a psychological war with their star, and walking away victorious was nearly impossible. He weaponized an innate talent that terrified elite passers, masking his intentions so brilliantly you would swear he blew his assignment. Then, in a violent flash, he would erase the separation, hijack the throw, and sprint toward the opposite end zone. Mere turnovers were never enough. He craved defensive touchdowns, elevating his lethality far beyond standard defensive backs. The dynasty architect found this out brutally in 2009. The ball hawk housed an interception on what was honestly a perfectly placed strike. The defensive genius simply deciphered the trajectory before the release ever happened, leaving permanent mental scars on the opposing captain. He openly confessed that Baltimore prep weeks demanded a massive, flashing target over that specific jersey number. During midweek sessions, no other opponent consumed more of the legendary quarterback's screen time. He agonized over frame-by-frame footage, analyzing footwork and helmet tilts for tiny tells. The fatal flaw, the defensive anchor, was doing the exact same thing. At times, the haunting reality was the opposing safety seemed to understand New England's scheme better than its own mastermind. Despite the agonizing chess matches, massive reverence existed. The legend claimed having that weapon in your own locker room would be an absolute dream. But staring him down across the line of scrimmage turned game day into an absolute nightmare. That potent cocktail of terror, admiration, and rage forged an iconic rivalry. If one specific ghost still haunts the greatest winner in football history, it is undeniably Nick Foles. They lacked a sprawling history, but their ultimate collision detonated on the grandest platform imaginable. Super Bowl XLII. New England walked in as massive juggernauts. Their captain aired it out for over 500 yards, yet they still walked away totally empty-handed. The gunslinger who stole the spotlight wasn't some legendary Hall of Famer, it was a backup named Foles. He was essentially a spectator until a late 2017 injury forced him to replace the franchise starter. The postseason arrived, and he morphed into an inferno, stepping onto that Minneapolis turf. He possessed absolute reckless abandon, and the world witnessed it. Philadelphia responded to every single heavy blow, completely preventing the reigning champs from establishing dominance. The signature highlight totally excluded the legendary veteran. Instead, it was an audacious halftime trick play where the underdog quarterback actually caught a scoring strike. It was brazen, bordering on insulting, and executed flawlessly for an apex predator like number 12, witnessing your counterpart reel in a massive score while you desperately claw from behind leaves permanent psychological shrapnel. The final whistle birthed a deeply uncomfortable scene that the football universe permanently engraved in stone. Amidst the celebratory chaos, the defeated icon marched into the tunnel, deliberately bypassing the customary post-game handshake. Excuses followed, but the footage screamed volumes. This absolute heartbreaker violently derailed the quest for a sixth Northeastern crown, crowning an unlikely hero with the ultimate trophy instead. Publicly, the legend keeps it cordial. But that 41-33 final tally undeniably festers in his competitive soul. Across an empire built on triumph, this journeyman stands as a solitary figure who snatched the crown when the stakes were absolute. While one backup delivered a singular devastating blow, a certain New York rival inflicted double the trauma. Both on Championship Sunday, despite possessing an unmatched collection of rings, a relentless nemesis from the Big Apple perpetually served as his kryptonite under the brightest lights. The initial absolute crushing blow landed in February 2008, right as his squad hunted an immaculate, undefeated legacy, cruising through 16 and they stood mere moments from sporting immortality. Yet, the gritty nav foes viciously ripped up that script. During those suffocating final ticks, the underdog gunslinger miraculously evaded a violent takedown, violently hurling a prayer deep into the secondary. Witnessing an impossible, gravity-defying helmet grab, that singular miracle ignited the final scoring drive, murdering the ultimate undefeated fantasy. Fast forward 4 painful years to Super Bowl XLII. In 2012, vengeance seemed locked up with a late fourth-quarter advantage until history brutally repeated itself. Yet Ella remained completely unfazed, orchestrating a relentless, surgical drive, the ultimate turning point, a spectacularly threaded needle, right to Mario Manningham hugging the boundary. It was a dart so flawless it earned reluctant awe from his rival, sealing another breathtaking comeback that left the legendary quarterback absolutely stunned. The ultimate sting was losing to a guy nobody seriously put in that same elite tier. Ella lacked the shiny MVP trophies, yet on football's biggest stage, he morphed into an absolute assassin. Years passed, cooling the bitter rivalry into mutual admiration and televised banter. However, those twin heartbreaks permanently haunt the GOAT, proving undeniable greatness still bleeds. Your ultimate nightmare is always lurking in the shadows, and for him, that kryptonite wore number 10. Prior to February 2008, David Tyree was basically a ghost to anyone outside the Big Apple. A fringe roster guy, he carved out a gritty living blocking on punts, not catching glorious bombs. Then, destiny called, and absolute nobody violently destroyed the dream of an undefeated campaign during Super Bowl XLII, staring down an 18-0 squad, boasting a historic offensive juggernaut spearheaded by elite legends. A blowout coronation felt absolutely inevitable. Yet staring at the clock with barely 60 seconds remaining, New York needed a miracle. Facing a critical down, Ellie miraculously escaped certain doom, scrambled frantically, and threw a desperate prayer into the chaotic abyss. Tyree skyrocketed as a vicious defender clawed ferociously at his limbs. Inexplicably pinning the pigskin right to his crown, he secured the impossible grab. A stunt so utterly absurd he later confessed it. It was purely unscripted. Raw grit took over, and that logic-defying moment single-handedly resuscitated their championship pulse. Moments later, they punched it into the end zone, brutally executing New England's flawless run. It was a devastating physical blow to the stomach. He played a brilliant chess match, only to get checkmated by a total underdog's sheer luck. His professional tenure fizzled instantly, practically vanishing from the receiving stats forever. Honestly, he never had to do anything else. One iconic flash cemented his eternal legacy, inflicting everlasting trauma upon the legendary quarterback who always confessed one truth: taking a brutal smash is his absolute nightmare, and Kyle Williams specialized in delivering that exact agony. Buffalo's ferocious trench warrior practically built his entire resume on violently collapsing the pocket. This was no fluke. With 24 brutal strikes and 7 massive takedowns, he became an inescapable, recurring terror. He brought zero Hollywood drama, no arrogant banter, no psychological warfare, just pure silent aggression. The sheer violence on the gridiron conveyed his terrifying message flawlessly. A 6'1", 300-pound wrecking ball, he possessed a freakish combination of explosive speed and brute force that utterly shattered their protective wall. Facing that defensive front guaranteed absolute chaos straight up the gut. The exact suffocating trap signal callers despise. You can easily dodge outside threats by stepping forward, but when a colossal monster charges right down your throat, escape is impossible. The rivalry exploded in 2011, shattering a pathetic historical losing streak against their bitter divisional nemesis. He spearheaded that dominant victory, aggressively bullying blockers and forcing the legendary passer into critical blunders. Even in triumph, the quarterback limped away battered and exhausted from outrunning 95. Yet through the savage violence, deep mutual honor thrived. They fiercely validated each other's relentless grit, but pleasantries cannot heal the lingering scars of those vicious collisions. To this day, That defensive titan remains the ultimate boogeyman who repeatedly transformed game days into absolute hell. Acquiring Chad Ochocinco in 2011 felt like securing the ultimate offensive weapon. An elite gunslinger paired with a flamboyant playmaker seemed destined to ignite a completely unstoppable scoring machine. Reality hit like a brick wall. Their fundamental philosophies regarding football and professionalism were tragically incompatible right off the bat. The flamboyant star lived for the cameras, transforming every single reception into a massive viral spectacle. Such antics flew in Ohio, but this dynasty operated purely on silent, militaristic discipline and relentless execution. Zero ego, zero distractions, absolutely zero nonsense. The legendary quarterback embodied this hardcore philosophy entirely. Inner circles revealed massive tension as the flashy receiver completely failed to grasp their intensely complicated offensive scheme. One demanded surgical perfection and flawless rhythm. The other drifted aimlessly, never quite hitting his assigned marks. A singular wrong step brutally assassinates a drive here, and the quarterback absolutely refuses to mask his furious anger when perfection slips. The dismal statistics spoke volumes. Across an entire grueling campaign, he secured a pathetic 15 grabs for 276 yards and a single score. Plummeting from an elite defensive nightmare in Cincinnati to a total ghost overnight was a spectacularly brutal crash. Ochocinco, constantly craving the camera flashes and obsessively updating social media, threw pure gasoline on a rigid locker room culture built entirely around grinding in absolute silence. His Hollywood attitude violently collided with the quarterback's relentless discipline, turning this high-stakes gamble into a complete and total disaster. By December, the legendary passer kept quiet publicly, yet the friction was suffocating. A ruthless perfectionist obsessed with winning was always destined to crash against a sheer entertainer. And that catastrophic campaign proved it entirely. We are talking about an immortal career, absolutely overflowing with legendary hardware and shattered records. Yet even the undisputed gridiron king faced terrifying ghosts who crawled directly under his armor, starting with the pure defensive genius of Ed Reed. Nick Foles and Eli Manning delivering agonizing championship daggers, alongside David Tyree's logic-defying, miraculous helmet grab, Kyle Williams bringing relentless physical violence, plus Chad Johnson's total mental disconnect. Every single nemesis carved deep wounds, scripting agonizing chapters into a legendary saga. This was never just football. This is absolute warfare born from grueling, red-eyed midnight film sessions that completely fried the mind, demanding sheer perfection while marching onto the turf on game day, only to crawl back up that tunnel utterly gutted by a soul-crushing loss. That raw devastation forged iconic, unforgettable blood feuds. If you felt this intensity, know we burned endless midnight oil hunting down archives and splicing tape to resurrect these ghosts. So, if this breakdown brought the heat, absolutely smash that like button, lock in your subscription, and ring the notification bell. It completely fuels our grind to deliver premium sports tape. Now sound off below who else truly deserves a spot inside the legendary quarterback, starkest hall of nightmares. Fire your hottest takes into the comments for a chance to shine in our next breakdown. Appreciate you riding with us. Catch you on the next deep dive.